I love Pokémon. I mean, I am Professor Hazel, so yeah, duh. Also, I'm an animation student adjacent. I created my first character animation, and here's how it went. So, early this year, I was given a task. My final for class, actually, was to animate whatever we wanted, but using the tools we learned in said class. Sounds fair. Little did anyone know, aside from a few close friends, I had a plan. A massive plan that may or may not have been a bit more than I bargained for. Keep in mind, I had other classes too, other homework, other finals, all in a similar caliber to this one, and they all had to be crammed in 10 weeks. However, for this specific final, I had planned ahead of time. I had a big idea and decided to storyboard it on week 2. So if you want to learn how I made this animation, have a story time, or gain some thoughts on how you can improve from my mistakes in future endeavors, keep watching. And hey, stick around for the results too. So anyway, the concept was simple. A Pokémon battle. But which Pokémon to use? I actually scoured the Pokédex. A dragon was always going to be on the list, but which one? After a lot of planning, looking at movesets and sizes and the like, I decided on Druddigon and Aggron. I also had to make sure that the models with rigs existed online. I wanted to be sure that I had every single asset prepped for when I would actually begin the animation process. Two menacing-looking powerhouses that wouldn't be too tough to animate, surely. I mean, they're both bipedal, so it's not that complex. I had never attempted using a rig or animating a rigged character to this effect before, but I figured my ambition would suffice enough. I then started with storyboarding. I've taken some storyboarding classes before, but it had been years. So instead of making a completely professional storyboard, I just took what I learned and made it for my eyes only. That's how we end up with stuff like this. I really recommend just making something first, whatever it is you want to make, and then you can actually make it good later. Just get your ideas out there somewhere. My storyboards do indeed look Asperberry. Who cares? And after I took a few hours putting my ideas down, I then slept on it for weeks. The next step was just waiting. I waited for any moment, any lull in my studies that would allow me to begin on this project. Needless to say, that didn't come for another 3 or 4 weeks. But all my pre-planning helped my brain stew on it for a while, and everything was there was a new development in my class's final rubric. I didn't quite have enough class techniques in there to fit everything according to my storyboard, so I had to really figure out what I was going to do next. Back to the drawing board. But not literally, because I didn't have time for a new storyboard. I had to retrofit a new Pokémon onto the storyboard in order to fit class specifications. One that would fit the approximate moves already there and include a vital part to my grade, vines. See, in class, we learned how to extrude something along a curve and animate it. And I had to include this in my final project, but I didn't have a Pokémon here that learned vine moves. So back to the Pokédex I went. I researched, as good Pokémon professors do, and found a couple candidates. And truthfully, surprisingly, there's not very many Pokémon that do actually learn Vine Whip. I decided to remove Aggron, I'm sorry Aggron fans, and replace it with Serperior. Serperior has the move Vine Whip, of course, but it also had Breaking Swipe, a move where the user swings its tough tail, which matches this part in the storyboard here. Perfect. The bonus is that they're both from Gen 5, so you can kinda say it fits. Little did I know I was about to be in a world of hurt following this decision. Finally, it came time where I could basically solely focus on this final. And I cracked my knuckles, and I opened up my program to start, bring everything in, and set everything up all nice and pretty. Aside from the fact that I ran into my first issue. For some reason, when I imported these models, Serperior would come in just fine, but Druddigon would be immobile and completely glitch out anytime I tried to move his bones. Oh, mini lesson. 3D character models have something called rigs, which are a series of bones and joints which allow characters to be animatable in ways that appear more realistic to their forms. Their skin is exactly what you think it is. The skin deforms properly to wherever the bones and joints are moved. Okay, back to it. After messing around with everything for a moment, I realized I had to import Dredagon first and Superior second. Weird. On to actually animating the thing. With my storyboard as my, albeit now loose, guide, I got to work. I spent so many hours on this, and honestly, there's still so much I wish I could do. I physically moved the joints around in space and keyframed them individually. Yeah, this wasn't a very great way to do it, and I'll explain why. There are something called controllers, which you basically constrain to specific motions like rotation or translation or whatever have you. These are the little circular things right here. Keying these controllers instead of the joints gives you much more freedom to mess up and then repair it later. Keying the joints individually makes many more keyframes, which can get confusing and make it harder to make subtle changes. But everything was going extremely well. I was getting the hang of the first poses, setting up my camera to follow the storyboard, and ultimately having a great time just learning how something like this could be done. Except for the fact that I had learned why Superior wasn't a great idea to begin with. Snakes are weird. They don't have arms or legs, if you've noticed, and so they just kind of wiggle around and get places through extremely powerful muscles in their body. This is extremely hard to animate for the first time ever, and this is why controllers are useful. Honestly, I spent most of my time animating Superior. It's like I was waterboarded for hours only to be able to gulp another breath of life-sustaining air after surfacing, and the surfacing part was animating Dredagon. I'm being really dramatic, but truthfully, I had a hard time animating this snake. I hadn't known about controllers or hierarchy stuff yet, so I wasn't actually able to simulate the slithering as effectively as I would have liked. And then everything crashed. My most common crash was when I opened up my graph editor, the thing that shows me all the keyframes, and then tried to move too many keys around. I have a convenient crash counter that'll tell you how many crashes I got over the course of the video. Put your guesses in the comments. If you're right, I'll give you a metaphorical chocolate chip cookie. And now, this video is sponsored by no one. I sponsor myself. Please interact with the video in whatever way you see fit. It helps out a lot, and thanks for watching so far, guys. So the bulk of it was, indeed, the animation part. I would go through the poses as you're seeing here and just pose, connect for hours. But enough of that, and you start getting some really cool stuff. It's an amazing feeling getting to see your vision come to life. Aside from all the crash, oh, there's another one. An interesting thing was translating and changing my storyboard in real time. I had only about 4 weeks or so to get this done, so quick decision making was imperative. One of the first and most important changes was the beginning. Superior jumps up and strikes instead of running towards Dredagon like Aggron would have done. I feel overall this allows for a more dynamic animation. This was also to avoid animating the ground movement of Superior. You'll see I don't do a lot of horizontal movement here. The greatest thing I learned from this assignment is how much respect I have for animators of all types. How difficult the work actually is to make a believable, living, breathing character. That and the fact that I actually like to animate. Back to the animation. My favorite part to animate was when Dredagon sweeps through the sky. This part was accomplished through something called a motion path. It's basically a glorified curve. I attached a locator, just a pin, onto the motion path and then Dredagon onto the locator. This way the animation of the curve wouldn't mess with the keyframes I had already used for Dredagon. I then independently animated Dredagon while on its path, which is how I was able to get the swooping motion. Now for the really fun part, animating the hyper beam. This was by far the most dynamic pose in my storyboard. I wanted to emphasize the breathing motion and expansion of the chest before the blast. The blast itself was the same technique I used for the vines in class. The thing that I said I needed Superior for. Oh. Well, it's too late now to change everything, just gotta press on. Truthfully, I was pretty bothered by this revelation, but Superior is one of my favorite Pokémon, and I spent too much time on it already. It was like week 7 or 8 by this point. The vines were similar to the Dredagon motion path. This time, it was animating the extrusion of the beam instead of the location. Fast forward a little to the vines and just repeat the process. I think my favorite bits to animate were the wind-ups and the impacts. With the impact of the hyper beam onto the vines, I had to imagine what that would look like, and add in some recoil. It's all what makes it feel more alive, and it's cool that I'm still learning, so I have much more time to improve. After Superior hits the ground, I had to make sure the timing was proper and didn't feel too clunky. Animating this spin was the most difficult part of the entire project by far. The most crashes, the most time spent was on this alone. Since all of these segments are moving parts, it was near impossible to do it perfectly on the first go. Many revisions along the way were needed, but the issue is I have this mess of keyframes and I couldn't properly change things without altering other things, and ultimately I just had to put in a good enough state. But I am overall happy with how it turned out. Yeah, we're gonna kind of skip the final segment of making the animation. I know. We'll see it in a minute anyway. I want to discuss how I almost lost everything. Rendering takes forever. An animation consists of hundreds of individual images, right? So each one of them has to be rendered with the proper textures and lighting, which takes computing power. This accumulates into hours of time just waiting for the computer to do its thing, and sometimes it gets it wrong. A majority of my final week consisted of babysitting the render. Luckily, there's a really quick render engine my school provides. It uses your graphics card instead of the CPU, which allows more render times to be essentially cut in half or even a quarter. This made it to where it was much easier to change things on a dime and still have it render in a decent amount of time. How did I almost lose everything? I work on a flash drive. Yeah, I know, boo me all you want. I do keep backups, but most of the time they're severely outdated. Anyway, it was a long day and a couple of days away from the deadline. I shut down my file for the day at school, but the file explorer was being strange. Everything was slow, and it's like it couldn't process anything. I closed, then I reopened it. Everything was gone. None of my files were there on the drive. Every folder claimed it was empty. My heart shattered. I had a school friend onlooking the entire thing, and she could tell I was a half second away from irreparably imploding. I silently logged off the school computer, gingerly removed my hard drive, and just sat there. Taking a single deep breath, I then plugged it back in, logged on, and hesitantly hovered my mouse over the file explorer icon. Click. The files were back. Every single one. Thank Arceus, it was merely a visual glitch. I felt so relieved. The next day I went back on campus and finished my rendering. Kinda. The visual glitches within my render kept happening, the textures would apply incorrectly, and worst of all, certain render scenes didn't render out specific things. One of these things that would not render out were the curves I used to do the vines and the hyper beam. Luckily, there was a simple workaround. I had to change these to polygons, but I must have rendered like 5 or 6 times minimum. But after all was said and done, I got to do the fun part. Adding sound effects and editing visuals. I barely had enough time though. I quickly found everything I needed and put it together quickly. My time had to be spent on other finals, and this one was due in like a day or two. Ultimately, I learned so much through this process and gained a better understanding and a deeper love for animation than ever before. I'm hoping going through this process will help me create even better stuff in the future. As they say, it's all for the love of the game. So what do you think? Want me to try out more animated projects in the future? Please like and subscribe if you found this video interesting, and keep on training.